So our programming has been brought to you by the Northeast Extension Risk Management Education Program and also Northeast SARE. And as always, appreciate their support of our work. And over the last, now today we have an exciting presentation with Travis Samuels, who's a co-owner of the new Zion Growers business, which is an industrial hemp processing and value-added product company that is located in St. Johnsbury. And Travis and his partners have been working on getting this hemp venture up and running for a little while and making great progress over the last couple of years, despite all maximum COVID. But he's here today to talk to us about exciting venture, and Rose Wilson is also here, and she's been working with Travis and others involved with Zion Growers. So with that, Travis, I'll turn it over to you.
Perfect. So as Heather was saying, hi everyone, I'm Travis. I'm the co-owner of Zion Growers and the COO. I appreciate Heather and Catherine and Rose for putting this together and allowing me to come to speak to everyone. So as you know, it's me and my partner. We started this venture a couple of years ago, and our main goal and focus is around in the processing industrial hemp for herd and fiber. So a little bit of background about myself and my business partner and my cousin, Brandon McFarland. So initially, I grew up in St. Johnsbury, Vermont, well, in Barnet, but I went to St. Johnsbury Academy for high school. After that, I went to school for hospitality at Johnson & Wales. I got my bachelor's degree in business management and hospitality management. After that, I kind of moved around a little bit. I've worked in cannabis grow operations in the West and in Oregon and Colorado. I've moved around and worked in landmark hotels and resorts in Boston as well as in Florida. So I've moved around a little bit, and it was only recently within the last 2 to 3 years that I've actually moved back, and I've been on for full-time for Zion Growers, basically on the ground doing some real estate work that we work on for housing, and obviously to be on the ground for our herd, for our hemp production facility here in St. Johnsbury. My co-owner and cousin, Brandon McFarland, he's currently a public interest attorney in Pittsburgh. He actually went to Norwich University, so he's a cadet, but originally he's actually from Florida. He's a current major in the U.S. Army. He's been deployed to Afghanistan. He has obviously his law degree, but he also has his master's in engineering and civil affairs. So he's kind of well-rounded, and we kind of complement each other. You know, if you ask anyone anything about hemp, or you ask anything about business, you know, one of us usually has the answer to one of those. So, let's see here. So really what we do kind of breaks down into 3 parts here. Processing industrial hemp stock is obviously our main go-to. That really involves separation of herd and fiber from the stocks that we receive. We then take those, put them through this machine you actually see here. This is the entire system. This is actually the bale and roller on the end here. And this is the system that we have been contracted to buy from a group called Formation Ag out in Colorado. So they design these and manufacture them on site, and they go through a whole system of separation of herd and fiber with multiple cleaning stages, hammer mill processing, and herd sizing that goes basically into making sure that we can provide the kind of quality and metrics that people are looking for, the sizing. So depending on what you're using it for, herd has to be very specific sizes, and that machine allows us to do that. Also, supply chain management obviously is between working with farmers and working with the secondary market, and kind of being the bridge between that and kind of taking that role upon ourselves, making sure that we know where everything is, where the market's going, where are the buyers for what we're trying to sell. That includes business outreach for the companies not only that we're buying people we're buying from, but the people we're selling to, as well as growing the market internally within Vermont for a lot of things that don't necessarily use hemp currently, but have the potential to, but they don't really use it because it's just not that well known. So moving on from there. So the main reason, obviously, I'm here today is to kind of explain how we ended up where we are in the industrial hemp business. So we've started our overall business as Zion about 5 to 6 years ago. And through that progression in about 2018, with the passage of the Farm Bill, we got more into CBD. My father here in Barnet, as well as a farming friend of his, decided to go all in on CBD, as many people, of course, did. And that kind of put our minds in motion. I was living in Boston at the time, and me and my cousin Brandon were like, okay, how can we help them? How can we get involved? How can we make this make sense for them? And after doing our fair amount of research, we realized that the issue that they were going to have was with storage and with drying. So we began to set up the process of buying land, buying equipment, and basically ensuring that we were going to have somewhere to store. We were going to be able to build a business around storing for other people, as well as using the equipment that we'd identified to dry the material for farmers, and then find the additional outlets to work with people to make tinctures and salves and things like that. So we could kind of almost have the same thing what we're doing now, just more in the CBD space. Unfortunately, as you all know, or may not know, CBD crashed, and we ended up not being able to sell our product. Still sitting on a lot of it, to be quite honest, and that's par for the course for a lot of people. So definitely understand that, and how CBD kind of left a bad taste in my mouth and some other people's. And I do have one question in the chat here from, and it says, is the equipment made in the US? Yes, it's manufactured in Colorado. Same company that makes it, they make and sell it. So what after what happened with CBD, we kind of had to look at what happened, where were the issues, and is there anything that we can kind of stay in the same space and continue to make this work? So that's when my cousin had the idea for industrial hemp as opposed to CBD. Now, we already had a little understanding about how this would work, and we kind of wanted to pivot into a similar position and role within industrial hemp to kind of continue what we were already doing. Really the origin story of our business is my cousin has size 15 feet, and he ordered a box of shoes online, and it's, in the middle of COVID when everyone's ordering everything, it kind of hits home more, but he had the box, and then he had paper inside the box, and then he had a box inside that, paper inside that, and then, the inserts for your shoes. So it's like he killed like 10 trees just for that one box of shoes. And is there another way to do this? And you can do that with industrial hemp. You can do from the box all the way in, potentially one day the shoes, hopefully, but even to get all that material that's made from trees, made from a much more renewable source, something that was really important and is important moving forward. And that's kind of where we see, industrial hemp moving forward. So the picture you actually see here is an older picture of the facility that's located in St. Johnsbury. It's locally known as the Ide building, but it's the ET and HK Ide building. They used to do processing for grains here, really feeds for chickens and things like that. There used to be an arm of Blue Seal. So this building has a lot of history. It's over 100 years old. And we basically moved in. We've worked with the owner currently to kind of get it under wraps. So as far as, boarding things up and making sure it stays stable as we go through the process of buying it. The building needs a lot of work, but given its location within the town, it's a very important linchpin to the town. Because if you're looking at the building here, these are the train tracks, and Main Street for St. Johnsbury is right here. This is now the Portland Street Bridge, this section right here. If you know anything about St. Johnsbury, so that, you can see it as you come into town, you can see it in most parts of downtown. So, not allowing this building to go to waste is very important. Our timeline right now is to have this up and running by harvest of next year, breaking ground on it this spring to really get the renovations started. So moving forward here. So some of the benefits of the crop, just to kind of hit a few basics for people. One of the biggest things is that you can use a lot of the equipment you currently own if you do, say, hay. A seed planter, a seed drill, hay rake, round baler. The only thing some people have a little harder time with is a sickle bar mower. And as I've been reminded, it needs to be an older model. But they do have that kind of equipment, and a lot of people do have that equipment already. So it makes the transition a little easier than if you were to say used to CBD or something like that, where you're putting a lot of things down on the ground. You're having to do plastic. You're having to do drip line. It's each individual plant. Harvesting is a whole nother ordeal, trying to get enough people out there paying additional help, where you can do essentially everything mechanically when you're looking at industrial hemp. It's a currently constantly ever growing market. As most people have found out, CBD was big because the door had really never been opened, at least in America. In a lot of other places it was already allowed, but industrial hemp has far greater potential for so many more things than CBD really does. And while CBD is great, as far as keeping an economy afloat, it doesn't really work, as we know. So having something that has a great market potential and is in a constantly growing market, and really the amount of things that you can make from hemp really makes it a almost ceilingless market. So it's exciting in that way, and there's things that we haven't even thought of that it's used for, and it's kind of a process every day. It also works as a rotational crop. There's a lot of data more on wheat and soybeans as it works with, but it's great for rotational crop as far as what it puts back into the soil. It's great at cleaning soils. They use it and actually near Chernobyl to clean up radioactive material. So it absorbs metals and things like that. So it really cleans and conditions your soil to prepare it for following harvests. At least for wheat, you can see an uptick overall in your yields for the following year, sometimes between 25 and 30%. It's not necessarily every year, but they can say 2 to 3 out of 4 years, you are looking at better yields. So it is something that can work with what you're already doing as rotational piece, as a cover crop, but as a cash crop as well. As I was saying, nutrient additive to the soil. When tilled under, it really, conditions the soil, as I was saying before, and the root system really helps to aerate the soil because they're a lot deeper and they're a lot more complex than some of your other rotational cover crops. And as far as what we are doing, it's identifying reputable buyers. And that's something that I've spent the last year doing to ensure that we don't end up in a much similar position to where we were before. Knowing how really everyone was, taken advantage of in a lot of ways really speaks to the importance of making sure that we have a market to go to and we know who we're selling to, what they've done in the past, and we have, a solid foundation moving forward to make sure that the people that we're contracting with are people that are actually able to buy what they say they are, and they have some experience in doing what they're doing. And that's really been a lot of my focus and what I'm trying to bring to the table. So some people may be wondering, how can this kind of work? At least in the interim, these are some of the things that we thought were very important to include, that really make this work for everyone and something that can really bring about change for farmers and make it make sense for people to switch over. So one of the things that, was really the problem with CBD is you're looking at sending things across the country, processors that are located states away, halfway across the country. So, even though you're getting paid upon delivery there, you're looking at X amount of travel time. So us being a local delivery, a local processing facility, we do want to pay upon delivery. So anything that shows up, there is storage that has to go into it. So there's a component for that. But, as soon as we have taken care of it, it is out of your hands. And, we pay people for what is delivered and not after we've processed it and sold it ourselves. So that was a big thing for us to make sure that we could do that for farmers. We're looking at a price per pound for how we want to evaluate, what you're bringing in for the crop, how much we can pay you for it. And that price is predetermined going into the harvest season before growing starts. Contractual agreements, obviously, handshakes in Vermont are great. And it's really the way a lot of things are done, but contractual obligations are very important for everybody involved to make sure everyone's on the level. They say locks are for honest people. So, having a contractual agreement is really important. And, I'm here, I'm always in St. Jay, I live in Barnet. So being around and seeing how all of this has affected people and kind of having that same thing happen to me, and seeing that, just because you have a contract doesn't mean everything, but having a contract with someone that is near you, understands where you're coming from, adds another layer to that legal security. So as I said, upon delivery, you're no longer responsible for anything coming to us. So storage may be a thing for some farmers that we have overflow and things like that. But even in those circumstances, that's still our responsibility. Obviously, there is a line for what is allowed for us to bring in and process. So, there are requirements that we do expect from farmers. Moisture content is a big one for us. The process of actually retting the fiber in the field, or retting the stalks in the field, there is a certain amount of moisture content that we do expect. So it's below 15, preferably something around 10. The storage that we have at the facility will allow us in a humidity and temperature controlled space to adjust a lot of that post-harvest once we get it on site. But having that lower moisture content going into that makes everything a lot easier for us as far as what goes through the machine and our ability to process it at kind of a higher rate. Give me one moment. So obviously another piece of this is making sure that your product isn't moldy. And part of that is understanding the retting process, which is not letting it sit too long, turning it, and just ensuring that you don't allow it to get to the point where it's past where we're looking for. It is a very tricky thing because there's a timing piece to it, and you're not looking for an abundance of rain at any point. You don't want heavy rains, torrential downpours, and things like that. Luckily, where the 90 days kind of sets out for industrial hemp, it puts it in a good place where it's a little bit drier towards the middle of fall, but it makes it a little easier in that time. So, a little earlier than now. We've been a little rainy recently, but like I said, you want more dew and less actual rain to kind of start that process and break down the natural glues that hold the fiber to the herd. And as I kind of showed before, there's a bale and roller that is a round bale and roller. We will be working primarily with round bales and really trying to keep it to that. There's a way to do it with square bales, but round bales are really, you can set them in, unroll them, cut your twine, and you're ready to go. The time frame that we're really looking at, as I said before, is that next harvest season, so 2022. And moving forward, that's kind of the timeline we are really shooting for. So it's a big push for the coming year, and we're really excited about it. And that is it for the most part. As I said, this is something that is really dear to me for my community. This is more of an entirety of a project that has really been a journey. I live in a town, as a lot of small towns in St. Johnsbury, many towns like it. We're missing that anchor thing. We're a very service-oriented community, and bringing something like processing of this level will benefit this town and can benefit everyone, just from a standpoint of anchor business, something that produces jobs and hopefully potentially a secondary market beyond that. So if there's any questions, anybody has anything to ask, I'd be happy to answer them for you. And this is also our contact information if anybody needs to reach out, anybody has any additional questions, anything like that moving forward.
Great, thanks, Travis. Rose, do you have anything you'd like to highlight, or considerations for the audience that's listening? Maybe, I know you've been working closely with Zion growers?
Sure. Yep. So one of the things that I think it might be fun for the audience to hear is the process that Travis went through when they realized, okay, CBD, so they started their business plan, they jumped 2 feet in on CBD, they realized, oh wow, CBD is not going to work, we're losing our shirt on this, but we're still interested in staying with hemp, so what can we do with hemp? And then there was this question of, okay, well, maybe we can do industrial hemp. And then the question became, well, if you're going to do industrial hemp, what section of the manufacturing supply chain are you going to be? Are you going to be the manufacturer that's producing the fabric that's made from hemp? Are you going to be the manufacturer that's producing the hempcrete that's a construction material made of hemp? Like, where do you see yourself on the supply chain? And that then enabled Zion to go back and really take a look at their markets and identify, wow, yeah, okay, industrial hemp is a big, broad category. What is it that we're exactly doing? And so maybe, Travis, you can speak to that about where you fit within the herd supply chain and who are the buyers that you are then supplying.
Sure, and I realized that this is a different version of my PowerPoint. I had that piece lined out in the history, but the kind of the progression for that was, getting in, we were like, okay, industrial hemp, the first thought we had, and as most people have, is fiber, shirts, shoes, clothing, things like that. And that was really where we wanted to start. And what we quickly realized is that their fiber market just isn't where we would hope it would be, where a lot of people hope it would be. Through that process, I learned that, in America, we don't really make fabrics. Most people make the yarn here or any kind of clothing material. Essentially, they make the yarn, they take that yarn, they send it to China or South America or other parts of Asia, and basically have all of that fabric made, and then they ship it back here, just because even though the shipping costs are what they are, it's still cheaper to have the fabric made across the sea. So it made it really an unviable option for us in the long term, as far as focusing solely on, fiber. The other part of that is, even if you are processing for fiber, you still have a whole lot of herd that you really have to deal with. So it's, the majority of the plant is still herd. So even in our want to focus on fiber, we still had this aftermarket product, this after piece that was like, okay, so what do we really do with this? After some assistance and some, we've had a great deal of help. Rose has been wonderful in helping us out, but we were part of a Launch VT, which is a startup program. And one of our coaches through that actually brought around the idea of, okay, so what's the biggest market, originally with industrial hemp, and it's actually seed, especially for imports for, facial products, health products, anything you see hemp oil in, powders, protein powders, things like that. So we were like, okay, let's see if we can do this, see if this makes sense. Part of that was looking at if industrial hemp can work as a tri-crop, so for herd, fiber, and seed. And that seemed like a good idea. But what we quickly found out was that when you set your sights on seed, you are really damaging what you're able to do with the fiber, just because it takes a little longer to have the seed come to fruition, and then your fiber is not of the same quality that you were originally looking for. So while it is a great idea, it doesn't necessarily work in practice, at least right now. But there are steps being taken to kind of fix that problem and see if we can actually try crop some of these things, if not use that fiber for other things. So we looked at seed, and it seemed like a great idea. Dual cropping was probably as close as we were going to get. Herd will work. But then we also realized in trying to work with farmers that really working for seed wasn't going to work, because the kind of machinery that was required for farmers to do this, the overhead was so great and so high that it was, how can I go to people and ask them to purchase $500,000 of machinery? How how does that conversation work? And it doesn't, because that's asking an onus of people that have already put so much into something, and it just didn't make sense for us. So basically having to shift gears from that and say, okay, if that's where the market is, if seed is such a big thing, but the overhead costs are so high, and fiber is a great idea, and we love all the things that it can do, but how can it really work? There are avenues for it and there are outlets for it, but the market is more built around paper and building supplies. So that's when we actually really focused in on herd, not realizing that, a lot of people had already come to the conclusion, people who've been doing this longer, that herd can be used for so many things. And as we found out, building construction materials, fiberboard, hempcrete, things like that are one of the biggest sellers. And then animal bedding is like the number one thing most people use industrial hemp curd for. It does have smell remediation properties. It can be used for mulch and things like that, but what most people have found a use for is high grade animal bedding. So that's kind of what we've settled on as far as how we can make this work, and finding multiple outlets and multiple avenues for hemp curd. It's used all across the country, and identifying people from California, people from Oregon, people from Washington, people from down south in North and South Carolina, some companies in Tennessee, all of which are looking for herd and fiber for the litany of different uses. So it's identifying the whole process for us was going step by step through each byproduct of industrial hemp and seeing, okay, how can we make fiber work? How can we make seed work? How can we make herd work? And doing whatever, conglomeration of those three makes the most sense. And herd and fiber are really, where the market seems to be leading right now, at least if you want to be able to do it without purchasing a brand new piece of $500,000 machinery. Sorry,
Great.
That kind of gives you the idea of, how we got to where we are in our business, and, some of the people we've been reaching out to and working with.
Great. Any questions for Travis and Rose, if you had anything else you wanted to chime in with?
Sure. Yep. So tying this into our first two workshops, as you can see, one of the reasons that we thought it would be so fun for folks to actually get the hands-on story from Zion is because they basically followed the steps that we talked about in the first two workshops. They went through what are our strengths and weaknesses as individuals and as growers, like where can we fit within the supply chain, who are the type of buyers that we feel we can interact with, and they wound up settling on, after several iterations, looking at becoming manufacturers. So they are not actually going to be growers. They're going to be manufacturers contracting with growers. And they're also not going to be creating really their own value-added products direct to consumer. They're creating a supply product that will then go to other manufacturers for further refinement. So again, they've really identified where they fit in the marketplace. And then from workshop 2, what we spent this past year doing is actually identifying with the product that they're going to be producing, this sort of base herd product. They've been identifying who are the actual buyers for those. So when folks looked at that chart that we had last week that said customer A, customer B, customer C, and how much volume are they going to be buying, and how frequently are they going to buy it, and at what price point, we actually had Travis and Brandon do that. They have a chart now that really helps inform and solidify the business plan, that they know who their buyers are, how much they expect their buyers to be purchasing, at what price points, and how frequently. And that supports their entire business plan for how much acreage they expect to have under production, the cost of operating the business, the cost of purchasing the facility and knowing that they're going to be able to service debt service. All of that gets informed by the market research that they've done and the confidence that they have both for themselves and the growers that they're going to be contracting with, that they actually do know where the product is going once they have it available to sell.
Well, my internet is going in and out, so I probably have to, can you guys hear me? Oh, good. Okay. I see Travis, you had your hand up.
No, I was trying to close out of something.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
There are a couple of questions. One about the price per pound that you would buy the hemp at, if you'd be willing to share that, or maybe, even how you came at, what strategy you're hoping to put into place to move growers into the market.
Sorry about that. Sure. So it really depends, because as the fiber crop, well, it's industrial hemp as far as a crop goes, you're kind of in a range between pound or weight per acre. So it's, around 3,000 is the lower end, and around 6,000 is on the higher end. So it really depends on what we're looking at. And if we're assuming that it's on the lower end of 3,000, we're looking at an average of about $8.50 an acre as a starting point for most farmers. So trying to just really use that as of an anchor, even when we're paying a price per pound. So if we expect around 3,000 pounds per acre, we'd still be paying, I believe it's in the 24 cents a pound range to hit that $8.50 an acre number.
Great. You were talking about high value bedding. I'm curious, is that like pets or?
Well, it is pets, but it's also for equine is actually the biggest one. Higher end, especially horse bedding, is something I never really had thought of until we started doing this. But the way it breaks down is if you look at how much people pay on average just to take care of a horse, especially with that kind of money invested, bedding is something most people don't really think about. The hypoallergenic qualities of hemp, the reduced dust amount of hemp hurd, its absorbency for moisture or liquids and smells. All of these things play a really big part into why it works. If you've ever had to shovel out a paddock for a horse, you know that is a real just challenge on a regular basis. So, being able to clean less, have more absorption into clumps and things like that makes it a lot easier for a lot of people, when they're cleaning. And it's one of those byproducts, if it's that much better and it helps me X amount and I have to spend X amount less and it saves me X amount of time, then why wouldn't I invest that little extra money into something that makes more sense? It's also obviously biodegradable, and the overall dust levels, while they're not non-existent, as some people have tried to tell me, because there is dust with this, you're not going to get around that. The amount is so much less, and it's easier on the animals from what I've come to understand. There was a gentleman at the Formation Ag plant was talking to me and kind of telling me some of the other different uses. And he told me a story that kind of really drives that home every time I think about it is, they had this animal that they, this young colt kept bringing back to the veterinary's office, kept having vets come in, had respiratory issues, couldn't figure out what was wrong with it. And they changed its bedding over to hemp hurd, and all of those respiratory issues cleared up in about 2 weeks. So it's, little anecdotal things like that, while not the case for everything, are, do show that it can be used for these things, and it is a better overall product. There's also a PetSmart, I believe is the company. I always get confused between Petco and PetSmart. But there's a push to change all of their animal bedding for their stores, for their smaller animals, for guinea pigs and stuff like that, over to hemp hurd. So if you think about a national chain like that switching over all of their animal bedding and, adding animal bedding of hemp hurd to their overall stock, which, some people already do. You can go to like Amazon and find animal bedding made from hemp hurd already. That opens up a door to an entire market most people don't even really think about on the regular basis. So it's, it's a growing market, and I think a lot of people are coming around to the idea of hemp hurd as animal bedding. Yeah, I see as JB posted here in the comments, Old Dominion hemp is the primary source for equine bedding, and that's exactly what it is. I did hear of a guy in upstate New York who's been using just mulched plants for his cattle, just for cow bedding, but it's essentially the same thing. It really, I guess, depends more on the quality you're looking for, but it definitely is a growing market.
Maybe, Travis, you can also touch on that when you were looking at your marketing mix, that the ability to use your herd for different markets, such as hemp bedding, and also marketing it to the construction industry, it gives you the ability to work with various grades of hemp.
Yeah, sure. As I was kind of talking about with the sizing of the hemp herd and the machinery that we're getting, it allows us to size the herd to whatever spec people are looking for. So depending on what you're using it for, you might need a larger size, you might need almost a powder to a finer size, obviously, if you're using it for like smaller animal bedding, things like that. But even hempcrete, where the diameter and overall length can be the make or break for how you use it, how it works, and how it binds with the lime is really very particular. I won't say I'm an expert on it, but understanding that you need to be able to meet that demand is really part of how you can be a part of the industry. So if you're looking for someone who needs hempcrete, he needs 1 inch by whatever diameter, and you're working with someone who is trying to use it for, say, plastics, and they're trying to make bioplastics, door frames, things like that. There's the hammer mill that I mentioned before. There's a secondary stage to that where it essentially pounds it down into this really fine powder, and that will allow you to use it and combine it. I don't understand the complete science behind it. I wouldn't know how to make a door panel from industrial hemp, but it's something that is biodegradable, reusable material that major manufacturers are currently using. The market isn't quite there as far as selling that, unless you have someone. They don't recommend you buying a piece of machinery to do that. But it's our ability to do all those things and going in and understanding that's what we had to be able to do. So if we didn't have a piece of machinery that allowed us to meet those specs, we really wouldn't be able to go anywhere with anything. We just have a big pile of herd.
Great, thanks. This has been really interesting. I've heard of people using hemp hurd for bedding, but I didn't realize that the possibilities were much larger. Have you gotten good response from folks around, that product from potential markets?
Yeah, the national market isn't great as far as what people have been able to provide. So a lot of the product that people are getting now comes from outside America. And it's, there's additional shipping costs, obviously, that are equated with that. But we've had a great outpouring of the samples that I've been able to send out of the stuff that we have already, saying, if this is what you can provide us with, if this is exactly what you're going to be processing, we will take all you have. Because they are looking for a domestic source of hemp hurd. They're looking for a domestic source of hemp fiber. And it just, it makes it easier for them, and it opens up the door for us to immediately step in. Some of the things that they're getting now, they're like 25% moisture for the hemp hurd. The length isn't quite right. So they're supplementing a lot of their shipped in product from domestic hemp. But, I thoroughly believe that we can provide easily what they're looking for at a lower moisture content and more to spec. So, finding a place to step into the market has been, I don't want to say it's been easy because it has not been, but understanding where to look and understanding what people are looking for, and really, just taking the time to really look at the landscape and understand, okay, this isn't going to be everything we're going to do. This isn't going to be everything we're going to do. We really have to diversify our customer base to make this work. There's not going to be just one customer. There's not going to be just one business that's going to take everything we have. And making sure that we've done our due diligence in finding all of those avenues has really been the important part. As Rose can, I'm sure, attest to, really doing your due diligence, making sure that you understand before you do anything, where everything is going to go, and as close to you can of how you can make it work if things don't go the right way right off the bat.
This is great. If anybody has any questions for Travis or Rose, please make sure you type them in. We are closing in on our time. I had one other question about once you have the herd that you want for the bedding, are you planning to put it into like a compressed bale? Are you processing, I guess, the herd, like how will it be packaged, I guess? And is that something you're doing, or is it going to like some kind of co-packer?
Nope, we would be doing all of that on site. As far as individual packing, it's something that, because basically what we're going to be doing is a form of drop shipping. For everyone that doesn't know what drop shipping is, it's essentially what you do if you have a store on Amazon. If you sell something, you put it on Amazon, and they will basically take it to the factory and they'll sell it and send it from their warehouse. So the companies across the country in Tennessee and North Carolina, South Carolina, out west will basically send us the orders, and then we will ship directly from here. So most of our storage will be in like super sacks and things like that, in about like 2,000 pound size super sacks. But we are assuming that we are going to have to package in smaller containers. The average size bale is about 33 pounds a piece for what you look at for animal bedding. So that's basically what we're looking at having to do, is doing our packaging on that, either in larger wholesale varietals, or depending on what the ordering is, obviously looking at smaller packaging. But we do plan on doing that all inside.
Yeah, I was thinking about little hemp bedding bales for the guinea pigs. Like those are probably pretty small.
Yep.
Great. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions from folks. But one question I think is, when do you think you'll be onboarding farmers or engaging farmers and moving forward with production?
Sure. So we will really be looking to, bring on farmers over the next couple months. And anyone on this call can feel free to reach out if you have more interest, if you want to know more just about anything that we're doing, if you want to get involved. We look to be up and running, obviously, by harvest of next year. So, really get up and running in the next couple months over the winter to get the logistics figured out, and get contracts in place, and really start the process of finding out, who wants to be involved, how many acres we're going to have, what kind of machinery we need to figure out for people, and really just get the ball rolling on this. Because, obviously winter is right around the corner and spring is not far behind. So I know it sounds crazy, we haven't even gotten snow yet, but I mean, as anybody who farms knows, you're thinking about next season already. So, getting everything rolling, now, essentially, I guess, is the easiest way to put it. So anybody who wants to get involved, anybody who has any questions at all, feel free to email or call anytime. This is, as I said, what I do all the time. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, maybe we can put your contact information in the chat box again before we sign off. And then how far are you planning to procure hemp from? Because we do have people on the webinars from Maine and elsewhere.
Sure. Initially, we're really looking to keep it in Vermont. just, that's where we are, that's where we live. Here, I'm gonna post that in the chat. So email and a phone number, and our website isn't quite up yet, which should be launching in the next month or so. But there is a placeholder there as of right now for questions and stuff like that. But as far as what we're bringing in, anywhere in the state, we basically factored in the idea that some shipping is going to have to take place, and our ability to cover that to some degree. Basically, if you come from further away, being able to pay whatever the difference is for you to get there, as opposed to someone who lives within the county, and kind of working that so we can bring in people from anywhere in the state. That's our initial plan. The availability of people outside the state, that's definitely a conversation we'd be willing to have. And if it turns out that we don't have enough people in Vermont that are, have the space to do it for the next coming season, we'd be more than happy to bring on people from, New York, Maine, New Hampshire, obviously within reason, but yeah, definitely a lot of outreach anywhere in the state and within the surrounding areas.
That's great.
I was just gonna say, can everyone see the contact info now?
It sounds like it might have just went to here. I just reposted it.
Oh, that was my fault. That was me.
Yep,
Okay.
There we go. Okay, great. Well, this has been wonderful. Thanks so much for sharing your journey with us. And we are all excited about this and definitely here to help, and hopefully the farmers will be interested in a new opportunity as well. And I think with that, unless there's any other questions, we will.
I did see one more here.
Yeah.
Just JB. It seems JB was asking about pollen. I just saw this one up.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Cross pollination is something to be to keep in mind. If you are growing CBD, or if you're growing marijuana with your business, there is a potential for pollination. So, obviously ending up with Hermes on the other end of this is potential for you if you're a CBD or a cannabis farmer. So that is something to keep in mind with this. There's, the spacing in a lot, unless you've got like an acre, a couple acres to spare, this might not work for you. And that's, obviously something you should take into account. But the idea that you're not going to have any cross pollination, if you have it X amount away, there's obviously wind. It's hard to guarantee anything like that. So that is something people should definitely keep in mind.
Great. And I'll add one final note. Catherine has put a very brief survey in the box. It would be helpful if folks had time to fill that out. We just are finishing up this Northeast Risk Management grant, and we need to do some project reporting. We would appreciate your help with that if you can take a minute. I'm sure we'll be sending it out to our email list as well. And I just want to thank everyone for attending today, and thank Travis and Rose for your time, and appreciate all your efforts. And I think with that, we will close this one out for today, and we'll see you all on November 4th.